Thank you all for coming to our presentation about when your well runs dry, what can you do? And let's start. I'm David Wimberly. I'm a longtime resident of St. Margaret's Bay. First off, this is a program of transition-based St. Margaret's. Thank you to the library and the library staff. They are really helpful to us and very gracious, and we've had a long association with them. We have two presenters here. Josh Feldmate is the owner and operator of Prime Pumps and Water Treatment. He's a local Nova Scotia guy who grew up in Hughley and now lives in Hammonds Plains. He has 9+ years of experience in well and water treatment and does the majority of his work in this community. He's very knowledgeable in all things wells, cisterns, and water treatments. Now, Don Smith was born and raised in Southern California and has lived in Arizona and New Mexico, all places where water conservation is a way of life. Even after moving to Nova Scotia, where water has historically been in abundance, she has continued to practice personal water conservation. Josh, you're up.
All righty. So, thanks for coming out, everybody. So, yeah, as David said, I was born in Hughley, been around here my whole life, and done a lot of work in this community, seen a lot of dry wells lately. So, I'm glad to see some people out there. There are people here that went dry last year, I would imagine. Yeah.
Almost dry.
Almost? Yeah. All right, so before I get started, I want to mention somebody I do a lot of work with. His name's Robin Crocker. He owns Dynamic Earthworks, and I have some brochures for him and some of the work he does. He was going to be here today with me to present, but he had to do a emergency funeral. So in his brochure, there's a job right there that you can see a picture of. That's 4 cisterns that we did together last summer for a customer. Similar to David's neighbor, they have no other source of water there at all. They basically live on the ocean. And anyway, I have some cards and some brochures for Rob there. He does great work. Oh, sorry, Dave. And anytime you need anything excavated or landscaped, I would highly recommend it. So before we get into cisterns, I want to talk about wells, dug wells, drilled wells, the difference between them, and give everybody like a basic understanding of where your water comes from. So most people around here probably have dug wells if you live around St. Margaret's Bay or you live near the ocean. And so a dug well is a shallow hole that's excavated in the ground. They used to be dug by hand quite a bit, now they're all dug by machine. But essentially it's typically a 20-25 foot hole in the ground. And so I'm going to do some drawings here, explain. Now this is our hole in the ground. So to get a dug well put in, you would have somebody with an excavator come in, dig a great big hole, and hopefully find some water. So let's say that's our water table in the ground. So they would come in and they would pump all this water out of the hole, and they would line the bottom of the hole with gravel. So they put a bunch of gravel and stone in the bottom of the hole, and then they stack well crocs. So typically 3 or 4 foot well crocs, not a very straight well. So they seal these well crocs together, and then they would fill all around the well with stone, different size stone, all the way up. You guys can see that over there. And what this is meant to do is, this goes all the way to the top. So what this is meant to do is, as the rain comes down, it makes its way through the ground. It goes down through the rocks and the gravel, and that creates like a natural screen where the water gets clean, essentially, right? Of dirt and silt and things like that. And the water is supposed to come up through the bottom of your well and then make its way up to the water table, so that when you put your pump or your foot valve in the well, you have hopefully some clean water to work with, right? So that's typical dug well today. And dug wells obviously work off surface water. So you're at the mercy of Mother Nature and how much rain we get. So another type of well that you see around here a lot, especially in St. Margaret's Bay, the rock wells. A lot of people have, basically 100 years ago, people dug a lot of holes by hand and they stacked rocks on top of each other. This is a rock well. There's our lid. And then basically just got backfilled with soil. This is all soil. So these rock wells can cause a lot of problems. They typically go drier quicker than newer wells because they're often not dug as deep because they were dug by shovel. And they typically get dirtier a lot more often than a new well would because there's no sealant between the rocks like you would with your well rocks. So I've seen a lot of people around here that I get a lot of calls for, hey, I have an old rock well. Every time it rains, my water gets really dirty. What can I do? Right, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. But anyway, that's kind of a little bit on dug wells. So let's talk about some pros and cons. All right, so dug wells. So, the dug well, the biggest pro, I would say, is cost. It's typically your cheapest way to get a suitable water supply for your house. Like a typical dug well around here is going to cost $5 to $7 grand to dig. Compared to a drilled well would be, like a 200-foot drilled well around here would be at least 11 grand, right? Plus hookup fees and stuff. So, the cost is about 5 to 7K. Hookup costs are quite a bit lower compared to a drill well because you're not going very deep in the ground with pipe, and you could use a pump in your house to draw out of the well. You don't have to run a submersible. You don't have to run wire. You can, but you don't have to. So hookup costs are typically more in the range of $3,000 to $5,000, including excavation to get hooked up. And it offers dug well offers a clean source of water when drilling's not an option. So, for instance, like David says he doesn't think there's a chance of if he drilled a well that he would get any water, which is typical for a lot of places around the ocean. So typically, the closer you are to the ocean, the worse your water is going to be when you drill. You have a high chance of getting salt water. If that happens, you pretty much wasted your money because treating salt water costs a fortune. And if you don't get salt water, you can get a lot of really bad stuff like iron, manganese through the roof, arsenic, uranium. Typically, you get a lot more of the stuff that also costs an arm and a leg to treat. So it's a great option for and there's other places around, not just the ocean. Like if you go from Enfield to Milford, there's gypsum everywhere in the ground. So you don't find a lot of drill wells around that area either, right? So you are at the mercy of the geology around you. So they're great for that if that's your only option. And they typically give good quality of water. So when you dig a well, you're typically not going to get into arsenic, you're not going to get into uranium, you're not going to get heavy metals, lead. You typically won't see a lot of iron and manganese. You may see some depending on the geology, but you typically don't have nearly as much treatment to worry about as you might with a drilled well. And then the cons. So the biggest one that everybody knows, they go dry. And when they go dry, a lot of people are stuck waiting for rain. And I went to at least 50 homes in the last 2 summers where people, same story as David, I've had no water for weeks. What can I do? I call a water truck. The water truck fills my well. It all runs out into the ground. And I just waste my money. And with no other option, people are basically left with nothing to do at that point, right? The biggest issue you'll find with your water is bacteria, nitrates, and septic issues. So because all your water is surface water in a dug well, you're going to have bacteria in the well. Every dug well is going to have bacteria. So if you want to be able to drink that water, you need to have an ultraviolet light, which I'm sure most of you probably do. The other big thing that we see in dug wells a lot is nitrates, typically from people spraying chemicals on their lawn or their neighbors spraying chemicals around. Anything that you put on your lawn or anywhere near the well on your property is going to end up in your well. So your neighbor's dog comes over and poops on your lawn, the rain will wash that bacteria down to the ground, eventually into your water, right? So anybody with a dug well, I highly recommend you have a UV light to protect yourself from those things. And nitrates aren't super common, but it happens, as well as septic issues. A lot of time, depending on property, if you have a small property, your septic's really close to your well, or your field starts to leach out into the ground, then you can have issues with getting septic bacteria, E. coli bacteria into your wells. So again, UV light will treat that. pH is your other thing. So because rainwater is very acidic, typically dug wells have low pH, which will eat away at your pipes. It will. It's not good for your health. It's not good for really anything. So a lot of dug wells. It depends on the geology. Sometimes there's things in the ground that will boost it back up, but a lot of the times people need treatment to boost the pH to get good drinking water. And then limited depth. So, as David kind of said, with a dug well, the well is what it is, basically. If you have a 25-foot dug well and it goes dry, you say, well, let's dig it deeper. But there's not really, you can only dig so deep with a machine. Nobody's going to get in there with a shovel and dig down 3 feet and change your life. Like, that's not going to happen either, right? So the well pretty much is what it is. So when you compare it to a drilled well, there are things you can do to a drilled well if it's going dry. You can frack it, you can drill it deeper easily. I mean, it costs a lot of money, but there are things you can do to increase the supply of water, or attempt to. But with a dug well, if it's dry, it's pretty much, there's not really much you can do. All right, so that's dug wells. Let's talk about drilled wells for a minute. Does that all make sense to everybody? Yeah. Everybody's on board? All right, so what is a drilled well? So a drilled well is just a deep, narrow borehole drilled through the ground by a rotary drill on a drill rig. It's not much different than you taking a hand drill and drilling through a piece of wood. Just a much bigger scale that goes down to the ground. So, let me picture a typical drilled well. So, I don't need that because we're not digging a hole. So this is bedrock. So typical drilled well, we go down to the ground. So the driller will drill down through all the surface area where your dug well would be until they hit bedrock. And then underneath bedrock is all these sealed pockets of water. It's called an aquifer that lives down here. So as the driller drills through all this rock, and depending on the area, it could be granite, could be sandstone, could be all different things. But as the driller drills through, it gets little fractures of these little pieces of water that enter the well. And that water is what feeds your well. And that's where your source comes from. So it's a totally separate source of water than you would get from a dug well. And so the way that they keep this sealed off is that steel pipe that you would see sticking up out of your lawn, that's well casing. The driller will take that pipe and they will go as far as bedrock with it. And then what they do is they put on a drive shoe, which is basically looks like a comb. It's like a beveled coupling that they would weld onto the bottom of that pipe, and they feed it into the bedrock with their rigs, and then they seal around it with a grout called bentonite, which is just a clay. But that seals that water tight. So when the rain comes down, the rain can't wash into the well and change your water chemistry. So all your water is coming up, it's being separated from the bedrock, and it's all coming up from below. So that's typically how a drilled well works. Let's talk about the pros and cons of drilled wells. All right, so the biggest pro for a drilled well is typically access to more water. On average, you can get typically a lot better water supply out of a drilled well than you can a dug well, depending on where you live, but for the most part. You don't have to worry about bacteria, nitrates, and septic issues like you do with dug wells. Because as I said, the surface water is totally sealed off from your supply of water down to the ground. You have a much higher reduced chance of going dry. There are some bad drilled wells around, don't get me wrong. But in general, a drilled well is gonna not go dry nearly as much as a dug well. Like a drilled well, all your water that's down in the bottom of that aquifer that I was drawing, that's water that's percolated down through the rocks from years ago. So a typical drilled well, you're probably working on water from, could be 3 to 5, 10 years ago from rain and snow, right? That's made its way down to the ground. So reduced chance of going dry. And then the ability to change the well, the ability to remediate the well. So if you did have a well that was working for a while, then it did start going dry on you, then you could do things like frack it, which is like hydrofracking is a well driller basically will come in and they'll plug the top of the well and they'll put a pipe through it and they'll pressurize it like crazy with a bunch of water and it blows all the seams open to hopefully allow more water to come through. You can do that, or you can have a well driller come and drill it deeper and see if you can get more water. But like David's neighbor, that's not always the best idea, depending where you live, especially if you're near the ocean, because you don't want to get salt and you could introduce much worse water, right? Okay, so what are the cons? Cons to a drill well, very expensive. It's your most expensive option for water, as far as cisterns, dug wells, drill wells go. So a 200-foot drill well today is going to cost you about $11,000, and that's just a hole in the ground. That's all you get. So depending on how deep it is and how far it is from the home, you're looking at another $5-7 grand to get that excavated, get a pump in, all your lines and all that, and then you have a good chance you're going to need treatment too. Most wells around here have iron, manganese, and lots of other things that require treatment. So all in, you're kind of looking at $20,000 for to get a drill well, get it hooked up and usable. Drill wells can be a gamble, depending on where you live. So, especially if you're near the ocean, like this community is, it's always a gamble. Even if you're half a kilometer from the ocean, you still have a good chance of getting salt water or pretty bad water. You could get nothing. You could drill, well drillers charge by the foot. You could drill 300 feet in the ground. They could be dry. And then you have to make a decision. You're $14,000 into this well and you have nothing, right? Do you keep going or you don't, right? Or you get, who knows, it could be full of arsenic, it could be full of lead, it could be, now you have this well that makes lots of water, but it's going to cost you $8,000 to treat it, to make it usable, right? So, and on the same thing, there's lots of wells around here, especially like closer to Tantown, some in these subdivisions here, Albert, Westwood, and Hubli. I've seen lots of wells that don't need anything. They have great quality water and they make lots of it, but there's not a high percentage of that. Majority of wells are going to need treatment. So yeah, higher chance, I mean, I pretty much just touched on that, but you have a much higher chance of poor quality water too. Higher chance. Because like I said, it's a gamble. You don't know what you're going to get. And most drillers can tell you, like, most drillers know areas well. They say, you know, we drilled on this street before and got nothing. All the wells on this street are 500 foot deep and they're, you know, don't make any water. All the wells on this street have arsenic. Most good companies can tell you that and give you some sort of an idea. But anyway, that's just a quick touch on wells. So now that everybody's kind of with me on where your water comes from, we'll talk about what you can do when they go dry. So, if you live in St. Margaret's Bay and you have a dug well that goes dry every year for the last 2 years, like David, probably other people in this room, and you have no water for 6 weeks, what are your options? Well, you're probably not going to dig another well because you're going to be in the same water table. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. You're going to have no water there either. And are you going to drill a well? Most likely not, because it's going to cost you a fortune, and you're probably not going to end up with a great water supply either. So I tell a lot of my customers, the only thing that you can guarantee will work for you is a system. And the reason that is because if you put a 1,500 gallon cistern in the ground and pipe your rain gutters to it, there's lots of different ways we can set them up. But a cistern, if David has his cistern in the ground and his well goes dry, he can switch over to his cistern. He's going to have, knowing David, he'd probably have 5-6 weeks of water. But a regular person, probably 3 or 4, right? But if you go 3 or 4 weeks and you can supply your house with water, no trouble, and then if it still hasn't rained and your well still hasn't come back, then you can call a water truck, pay $300, fill that whole tank back up, and you're good for another 3-4 weeks. And at that point, you've probably made it through the drought, right?
Did you say 150 gallon cistern?
1,500 gallon. 1,500, yeah. Actually, I have some, just so people know what they look like. If anybody wants a brochure, this is a brochure on cisterns, just to see what they look like. Here, here's the pass.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That too. Okay.
So basically, the best thing that the cistern gets you is you know that when you pay for water and somebody delivers it to you, instead of putting it in your well and losing it within 3 hours, you know you keep that water and you know that you're good for another 3-4 weeks. And if you had to do that once or twice a summer to get through, that's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? You'd be under $1,000, right? For a couple loads of water and away you go. So there's lots of different ways, like there's lots of different sizes on the back of that sheet. There's different sizes of cisterns. The most common is 1,500 gallon, because typically if you're gonna go all the way and bury a tank in the ground, you might as well go with the biggest one, right? And some people twin them together, like you can see in here, I showed you earlier, like we had one guy use 4 of them. So he had salt water in his well. So we ended up putting 4 tanks in for him. And these are the tanks he wanted to use. I'm not a huge fan because they come in 2 pieces and they like to leak. But those rock tanks are the ones that I use, and they're all one solid piece, lifetime warranty. They're a really good tank. But my most common setup that I do, and I've done a bunch of them the last couple of years, is you take a dug well and put a submersible pump in it, and then I pipe that pump into the cistern so that the pump is now feeding the cistern. And then we put a pump in the house that draws out of the cistern and feeds your house. But then we fill the cistern with a water truck. So you're starting with 1,500 gallons of buffer. So you're no longer dependent on the well. So as you use a little water from the cistern, the pump will turn itself on and it will squirt some more water into the tank to fill it back up. And I set it up so that if there's no water in the well, the pump will detect that, it will shut off, and then turn itself back on every day and try. And if there's water there, it'll fill the tank. If there isn't, then there isn't. Now, obviously, if it was dry for 6 weeks, like it has been, you just shut the well pump off and wait till it rains, right? But you can do the same thing with drill wells. Like I have customers that their drill wells make water, but if they do, a couple loads of laundry, a couple showers, they go dry. But they always come back. So we do the same thing where you start your day with 1,500 gallons of water every day, right? And as well as piping your rain gutters to it. But there's all different ways to set them up in different sizes. Like at David's place, we're going to be doing he's got a pump in his house already that draws out of his well. So we're just going to run another line from the cistern and hook it up with some valves so David can switch back and forth between his well and the cistern. So he can use his well all year round. The well goes dry, no problem. Go downstairs, close the valve, open the valve. Now we're on the cistern, and now he's got water again for a month or so, right?
So you don't use the prime and pump and nothing like that?
No.
Yeah. And is it practical just to have to rely on Mother Nature's rain gutters to keep the system topped up?
Yeah, I mean
You probably have to get an initial fill up. Just to
Yeah.
get the system filled.
Yeah, when you do the job, we would fill it initially that day.
But at least throughout the winter, you're going to get a lot of rain generally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like a lot of the time it'll be full and overflowing.
Right.
Like we would pipe it over. I'd pipe an overflow pipe somewhere on property.
Yeah.
Majority of the time it would just be bung full and overflow.
Okay.
The only time wouldn't be really is in a drought.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are
So,
there
yeah.
other water quality concerns if you're feeding from the roof?
Yeah, there are. So those are pretty similar to a dug well. So you need a UV light again. Bird flies by, poops on the roof, rain washes that down your gutter into the tank, you have bacteria. So you want a UV light. And again, rainwater's acidic, so you probably want a pH booster.
Could you use the same UV lamp that you got hooked up for your well?
Yeah, you can use all the same treatment. If you have a dug well, then you probably have a lot of stuff you need
Or
already.
just done through piping and valves?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. So as far as cost goes, it really depends what you want to do. How many tanks, what size of tank, lay of the land. But like you're looking at anywhere from 6 to 12 grand, like depending on what you want to do. Like we can do them pretty simple. For if you want to do like 1,000-gallon tank and be able to switch back and forth. If you already have a dug well, you already have a pump. It's not that much work as long as you can get close to the house. It's a day of excavation, running some pipes and valves and stuff. You're looking at 5-6 grand for a setup like that.
For about,
For-
what's a 1,500?
That'd be more like 6 or 7. There you go. Yep. Go
Have
ahead.
you ever put them in the house, like,
I put small ones in the house. Like something like this would never fit, but I have done small tanks for like 3 or 500-gallon tanks and set them up the same way. Like the well is feeding the tank, and then your feet working off the tank. That would typically be for somebody that maybe the well doesn't go dry every day, but maybe it does once a week, once every 2 weeks if too many people shower that day or whatever. Do that more with drilled wells typically because they're replenishing. Like if you have a dug well, it's not. If it doesn't rain, it's not going to replenish. And then if you only have 300 gallons, it's not like a lot of water to get you through, right? So, and the inside tanks are very expensive. So it's you get a better bang for your buck to buy a bigger tank and bury it outside. Like they're all like a 500-gallon tank that fits through a doorway in the house is almost the same cost as a 1,000-gallon tank that I would bury outside, right? So.
So David was talking about an IBS tank. Are you referring to, is that different than what?
So that's different. I've seen people
We have
drive.
a half hour of questions and answers.
Yeah.
And I think you'll cover all this stuff anyway. And
Yeah, I'm almost done.
we'll give enough time for everyone to ask their questions. And I'll talk about IBS if
Yeah.
Josh doesn't.
Yeah, but I mean, IBS toad is those big square tanks with the cages around them.
Yeah,
You see
okay.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they are common for DIY stuff, like people do.
And do you put those in the house?
No,
Okay.
those are good. They're not meant to be big.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you, if this is going outside, how deep do you have to bury it?
We typically bury it 4 feet if we can.
Oh, okay. And that's enough.
Just like any water line would be. Yeah.
4 feet of soil above the tank.
Yeah, try to. Yeah, obviously sometimes you hit bedrock, sometimes boulders, whatever. But I mean, even if you had 2 feet, like it's so much water that it would be very hard to freeze. It would have to be very cold for a very long time
Yeah.
to freeze. Right. But yeah, that's basically.
Is that submersible pump, does it have to have a pressure tank to?
Yes, it does.
It does.
Yeah,
So where do you put that?
that would be in the house. That would be in the house. So like, in what scenario? Like if we put a submersible in the cistern?
In a dug well, like
Yeah.
you're describing.
Yeah.
And then you've got a cistern beside it, which
Yeah.
we just did this week.
Yeah.
And,
Good for you.
And then a jet pump sucking out of the cistern, so. And, but he's putting a pressure tank inside the well, which I
Yeah.
was very uncomfortable with.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Where else would you put, how else would you, is there any way to control that submersible pump that doesn't need a pressure tank?
Not really. Not anybody that's gonna make the pump last.
Is there a different kind of pump that'll ripple it over a lot slower, that's a different technology?
Not really. To do that system, you kind of need a submersible pump because of the way that controls work. You can turn a submersible pump on and off willy-nilly with controls, but when you do it with jet pumps, they lose their prime. So you can't turn it on and off all the time because it'll lose its prime.
No, the jet pump's in the house. So
Yeah, no, I know. But like to put a submersible in your well, like if you wanted to not have a submersible in the well and have another jet pump feeding the tank.
I don't want to do that. I've got he's putting a submersible in.
Yeah.
But he's got a pressure tank there too, saying
Yeah.
it doesn't want to cycle it too much.
Yeah.
Still need that pressure tank.
Yeah.
So it's got to push against the pressure.
That's right.
That's how it's designed.
Yeah.
And how usually, where do you, so this is out in the yard,
Yeah.
and there's no water line going into the house.
Yeah.
Where else would you put the pressure tank?
Well, typically you run a line into the house with a pressure and put a pressure tank in the house. Because everything in the pressure tank, your switch and all that. Like the role of pressure tank is a submersible pump. When it turns on, it's supposed to run for at least 30 seconds. So the reason that's why pressure tanks exist, so that when the pressure tank's empty and draw down on your pressure, when a pump turns on, if it's only going to squirt water into the cistern for 10 seconds and shut off, it's going to kill the life of the pump, so it can last very long. So that's the reason the pressure tank exists, so that it can put the water out that you used, and then also it has this tank to pump another 10 gallons of water into, so to keep it running for enough time, right? But typically, I would never put a tank in a well because it's just damp and moisture, and everything's going to rust and rot and not last long, and it's a pain in the butt when you have to fix things. If there's nowhere else if there's nowhere in the house to put it at all, I guess you could do that. Yes, sir.
How long can the water stay in this unit if it's not used before you need to change it, or do you? Like, how do you test the water?
I wouldn't. I mean, if it's sitting all year round, like it would get stagnant. I'd probably put some chlorine in it once in a while, like drop.
How do you do that?
Just so a cistern will have risers on it. So if you see on that picture, it has a green lid on it. So on that, we would bring risers up, which is just like something you see you see the green lids in your lawn for septic. Same thing. We would bring those up so you'd have ground access. It'd be something where you unscrew a lid and drop some chlorine in once in a while. If you were never using it, if it was sitting there all year. Good.
So we're going to move on a little bit on the program, and we will have a lot of time for these really good questions.
I'm getting the boot.
And
Thank you.
I have cards up here and brochures, and there's cards for Rob and stuff too. So if anybody's interested.
and so I will mention the IBS tanks are these square tanks that are roughly 4 by 4 by 4 cubes, rather. The size they go from 275 to 330 gallons. Our rain barrel is about 55 gallons, and it's a lot more complex to set up the rain barrels. So IBS tanks are what most people are using today, where they have a serious need for it. I have a friend with 5 of them head off his roof. I just put one in, fortunately, last year, just at the start of when my well clunked out, and the little bit of rain filled that thing up several times. And because it was gravity fed, I was carrying in buckets of water and using it to flush the toilet, and you could boil the water for mopping and cooking and all sorts of things. I got my drinking water from a friend. But even if you boiled it, you could purify that rainwater. And this is what our ancestors always would do. The other thing that we should think about in terms of resilience for what happens in our world is what happens if not only are we in a drought, but the power is out. Now, that's becoming more frequent, especially since it's no longer a public utility. They just want to make money off of it. But you can drop a bucket into a cistern and pump and get some water out. Or if your cistern comes into to your basement, you could even fix up the line in to the cistern, have a little faucet on it, and you can fill up a bucket in your basement from your cistern, if your grade works out right. But those are a couple things to think about, really. And I'm still looking for a hand pump that would work. Our ancestors always had hand pumps on the wells. When I grew up in Arizona, first off, the family farm still had one of those old-fashioned working windmills you see in the Western movies, wooden and that. We had it, and that's what we're using. And we also had an old-fashioned hand pump, and we did that.
You can still get hand pumps, I'm sure.
Yes, but they have a limited range that they can do.
Yeah, well,
So I'm really looking for one that pull a little bit more
yeah.
than the ones from Lee Valley Tools. Lee Valley has a nice one. It's beautiful. It works. It doesn't have much lift though, like the old ones did. So think about that when you do it too. You know, what happens when you have sort of a cluster of things you're going wrong? And that seems to be where the U.S. is leading us, and most of our leaders are just investing in big corporate solutions rather than, say, helping us put cisterns in, our good wells, and our good electric power, good cars. You know, it's so profitable. So you have to go around this and look deep, but you can't. Okay, now it's time for Dawn. I want to hear her solutions, and she's brought some lovely things to show us. It's really often really simple, because all in the family farm, we did a lot of water conservation, I tell you. So take it away, Dawn.
All right. I'm so excited to see you all out. I'm gonna grab one more thing, but yeah, I have to follow Josh, so I'm a little intimidated. He gave us like the hard details. I'm kind of the sideshow over here. Hopefully some of the things I have to share with you, you already know, and maybe you'll get a few nuggets that you didn't know already. So my name is Dawn Smith, and I am on the board of Transition Bay, and I have lived in the Bay for almost 20 years now. But I am originally from Southern California, born and raised, and have lived all over the Southwest. And so I lived with the reality of drought all the time. I have many childhood memories of being astonished that it was raining. Like, seriously, it's raining. We're running outside and we're smelling the air because there is a palpable sense of life that water falling from the sky gives in a very parched, dry place like California can be. And I have a lot of history, especially on my husband's side of the family, of literal family water wars. Of a ranching family that is in just battling the city of LA, and then the city of LA coming and taking water, a history of aqueducts being bombed with dynamite. The history of the water wars between LA and the Owens Valley is just, it's fascinating. So I've been steeped in it in a real lived experience and then in a family historical experience. And so it was always just kind of the way things were. There were practices and things that we did that I just thought everybody did. Like our motto of, if it's yellow, let it mellow, and if it's brown, fresh it down. I was a little embarrassed when I said that to somebody who'd never heard it. And they were really grossed out by the fact that you would leave your pee in the toilet and not flush it right away. So I had, leaving Southern California and going to places where water was really abundant left me with, a very different experience and a lived experience that other people had that was really different than my own. So moving to Nova Scotia, I felt like I moved to a place where it was like, how is there this much water in the world in one place? And so this is what I'm bringing to this talk, is a bit of my lived experience and things that we did that were very natural that sometimes people don't think about. And then kind of progressing on to those things that can naturally become part of daily life that can really help you conserve like 50 to 70% of your water usage, just really easy with really minimal disruption to your daily life. And then progressing on to things that you're gonna need to employ, and some of you probably did employ, when your well went dry, and how painful and tiring it is. I mean, when your well runs dry and all the things that you need to do in order to have daily living take place, it is mentally taxing. And there's It is. It's very hard, and there's a lot that goes into it that all of a sudden gives you a massive appreciation for when you can actually turn the faucet on and water comes out. So I'm going to take us through kind of 4 stages of things that pertain to water conservation. Some of them are really easy, and then others get to be more on that difficult scale of necessity. So the first one is we're just going to kind of take like an awareness tour of the places that you typically use water in your home. So bathroom, kitchen, and then outside. So in the bathroom, I was actually really astonished people didn't turn the water off while they were brushing their teeth. I was astounded. It was a shocking revelation. Yeah, and so when you look at statistically, leaving the water on while you are brushing your teeth can use up to 8 liters of water per minute. And so in a typical situation, like where you're looking at water usage, so the statistics are that you need about 3 liters of water for your like cooking and drinking daily. About 10 to 15 liters of water goes toward your basic hygiene and sanitation. And so if you are sending 8 liters of water a minute down the drain, and that is treated water, that's water that's, drinking water, that's all of the stuff that Josh shared, like this is water that's valuable and it's just running on down the drain. So something as simple as turning the water off while you are brushing your teeth. Doing shorter showers. We had a motto or like the length of time of a song, like a 3 to 5 minute song, is like how long you should be in the shower. And so that gives, especially those of you who maybe have younger people in your life, not talking about teens that I know, but like you can make up a playlist, like a family playlist, like this is your shower song and this is your shower song. And if you have grandkids coming to visit who are, doing something like that. So those are some things that work. I know there's like the happy birthday hand washing, like you wash your hands. So obviously showers a little bit longer. We'll get into more shower tactics in a minute, but this is the easy stuff. Colder showers, so like slightly colder showers would use less. This is kind of like an energy thing that David was talking about. So that kind of ties in with power usage, but it also is, like you're tapping your water heater less if you have a slightly cooler shower. And I won't get into the wellness world of like cold shower and cold plunges. That's a whole different world. Then if we go to the kitchen, there are some really simple things that you can do. I was kind of shocked to know that people turn the faucet on and wait for it to get colder before like putting their cup underneath. So that's wasting, that's just water going down the drain that you're waiting for that pipe water to come to like clear out and go through so that you tap into that really cold water. So an easy fix for that is just keeping a jug of water in the fridge. So when you want cold water, you're just dumping it right out. And by the way, I have all these tips on a handout. So if you don't want to take notes. Another thing that I found out that people do is run food that they want to thaw under warm water to thaw it out. So just kind of planning ahead, pulling stuff out of the freezer beforehand so that it's thawing, putting it either in the fridge or on the counter, depending on how long you need it to thaw. Another one was soaking pots overnight instead of keeping the dishwater running to scrub them as you go. So that's a really easy way. It's just like let the water do its job soaking in the pot so it's easier to clean. And washing produce in a bowl instead of having it under running water. And then the great thing about that is you have this large bowl, you wash your produce in it, and then you can use that gray water, that water that you just used to wash your produce, out to water your house plants or water other plants in your garden and do other things with it. So that moves us to outdoors. There are lots of tactics for saving water outdoors. Once again, like I see people taking their hose and spraying down their driveway to clean it off. That's wild. So, broom does a great job, and that's really, really handy. Washing the car at the car wash is actually much more obviously you're not using water at your own house. So if your well is even close to running dry, you don't want to wash your car at home washing it. And washing it at a car wash is actually better use of water conservation as a whole for the community. So that's another tactic. And then amazingly, dishwashers do save water. So an average dishwasher, a full load. Am I solving a fight over here?
Yeah.
So a full load in the dishwasher will, you're looking at 10 to 15 liters of water, as opposed to hand washing the same amount of dishes is probably like 40 to 50 liters of water. So if you're filling up your dishwasher and you're making it, a full load, it is more practical. Now our dishwasher broke and I refused to get a new one, so that will be happening before the summer, unfortunately, because it is a water conservation tactic. So if everyone in your household does just those little things in those areas of your house, it's a tremendous savings of water. It adds up really, really quickly. We need about 15 to 20 liters of water, but the average Nova Scotian actually uses about 250 liter of water a day. Halifax Water, I was informed by these gentlemen here, is saying that, was it 150? 250, okay. So there's different statistics, but 250 liters of water a day is what the average Nova Scotian uses. When in reality, we don't need that much.
The average family or average Nova Scotian?
The average Nova Scotian.
One person.
One person.
Wow.
One person.
That's
Yeah.
based on their statistics.
Yeah.
The water supply.
Yeah, yeah. So those are the easy things. Did those feel easy to you? Yeah, I hope so.
I have a suggestion. One of the things, so we have a sailboat, and one of the things that we do with people that come to visit us is say, we're on a boat. There's not much water.
Yeah.
We constantly use that.
Right.
And we're using gray water for the most part on the boat, right?
Yeah.
Salt water, but, yeah. So-
Yeah, it's amazing how much people don't think about it. Because especially those city people.
Yeah.
If people don't live on a well and they have spent their whole life on city water, where it's just you turn the water on, the taps run. I mean, occasionally I would have friends whose parents would get after them because, the water bill. The water bill is going up, turn the water off because of the water bill. But really, it's just this natural thing, like the water's just always there. And I think that's also a cognitive shift I'm seeing with Nova Scotians in general, is it's getting to be much more water conservation is top of mind because we're experiencing drought. So I'm going to transition into some hardware fixes, some things that take a little bit more effort, but are like really big return on investment. And one of them is aerators on your faucets. And a lot of times when people think about aerators on their faucet, they think it's gonna, they're often advertised as low flow. So people think if I put this on my faucet, I'm gonna get this trickle of water coming out. But the way they really work is they are infusing air into the water coming out. So it actually increases kind of the volume of the water. And and sometimes it even increases the pressure of the water coming out. Like we installed one on our shower and it actually increased the water pressure that was coming out of our shower head. So just when you hear it termed like low, I think they've kind of switched over some of that terminology, so don't call it low flow, they're calling it like aerator and other things. But that's a super inexpensive fix that you can do. Home Hardware has them. You can just add them on shower heads, faucets, anywhere you can add one. It decreases the output by like 50%. So every time you're turning that faucet on, there's less water that's coming out. The other thing is toilet displacement. So you can take and put a brick. Bricks are handy because they're square. You can take the top off your tank of your toilet, put a brick in there. So that displaces the water, and every time your toilet goes to fill up again, it's actually less water that's filling, but it's still plenty of water to flush your toilet. A lot of the older toilets, if you live in an older home like I do, a lot of older toilets, they don't have all of the features that are going to help you reduce the amount of water being used. So a rock, a brick, something in there you can even take, like a plastic soda bottle and fill it with sand and seal it up and stick it in there, and that's helpful. So that's toilet displacement. It's really helpful. In terms of laundry, I wear my clothes multiple times before I wash them. It was always like, when you get home, take those nice clothes off, put them over there. You got your play clothes. You wear your play clothes multiple times. I mean, they had to be like visually dirty before my mom was going to wash anything. So that has just been a lifelong habit that I've had, where I wear my clothes multiple times, you know, when they take them off, you know, hang them back up or fold them, put them away. And that reduces laundry tremendously. So that's another hack for those of you who are willing to do that. Only washing full loads, like I said, with the dishwasher, same with the washing machine. And the great thing about new washing machines, not only does the Samsung sing you a beautiful song when it's done washing, if you have a Samsung. If you don't, really highly recommend. It's delightful to know your laundry is done. But that all of the machines that have the sensors now, instead of just clicking over to have like a full load, just let the sensor do its job. Like that's what it's there for. So allowing the washing machine to actually assess your load to see how much water needs to be used is really, really handy. The other tip was to pre-treat stains. So instead of just throwing something in the wash, hoping that the wash will get it out, you can do a lot of work ahead of time to kind of pre-treat stuff, and then when you put it through the wash, hopefully you won't have to re-wash it multiple times to try to get a stain out. In terms of like hardware type fixes as well, there's it's a really good time to do a leak audit. We can lose a lot of water through leaks that we don't even know about. So like a toilet flapper can just be a silent leak you don't even know about, but it can eat up 200 liters of water a day in leakage. So one of the ways to test for that is to put some food dye, like a dark food dye, in your tank. Let it sit overnight, do not use it, and then in the morning, if you actually see that dyed water in your bowl, then you will know you have a flapper leak. And you can just go ahead and spend $5-10 at Home Hardware to get a new flapper, install it, and then you clean that leak up. The other thing we listen for is, like if you're on metered water, you can actually look at your meter before you go to bed, and then in the morning when you look again, if water has been used, you know you got a leak somewhere. Or if you're in, if you're in the middle of the night, you hear your pump kick on, and you know you haven't used water, there's a leak somewhere. So that's how we figured out we had a leak. My husband was like, why is the pump kicking on? So there's a leak somewhere. So we have to go on like a leak audit to find out where that leak was and fix it, so we weren't just losing all kinds of water. So that's something you could spend a few hours kind of taking care of, these little fixes that really add up and will save you a ton of water. So those are kind of the things to take care of before your well runs dry. These are the things that you want to be proactive about, and habits that you can start forming so that you're less likely to have your well run dry. So when we get to the serious shortage stage, then there are going to be some tactics that are going to be slightly more painful, like slightly more uncomfortable. This is where things get a little more difficult. The first thing I'll talk about is gray water usage. So you're talking about taking water and using it for other things. There are tons of ways to use gray water. This tub right here is really handy for, like, let's just say you are, let's say you don't want to take a freezing cold shower. And so you're running your bath water to start to warm up the water. You can stick this underneath the faucet as that water's running to warm up. Then you can fill this gets filled, you take your shower, and then you've got this water left to go and water something, or even wash the floors with it. I mean, there's all kinds of...
Or flush the toilet.
Or flush the toilet, yeah. And so anytime you have gray water, there are tons of different uses for it. There's even taking a tub like this and using it to wash your hands. And then if you have a biodegradable soap that isn't going to hurt your plants, you can then use that to water plants, wash floors, do other things. My uncle, he was this amazing handy person, and he took a cistern situation in their basement. My aunt loved to garden. She had the most lush garden yard in the world that was just phenomenal. But when the drought hit, she was going to lose. She just could not water everything. So my uncle set up a gray water system where he diverted all of the water from their shower, their kitchen sink, and into this cistern in their basement. He hooked it up to the garden drip water system. And he just took a drip water system and put it all, like snuck it into all the different places, all the different beds my aunt had. And it would just automatically kick on, like Josh was talking about, where it gets to a certain stage, it kicks on, it waters all the plants. So it was a great way for her to continue to grow food and ornamentals during an exceptionally dry period in a drought. And so things like pasta water, like saving your pasta water, and like I said, like washing vegetables, there's all kinds of water uses that we have that we just dump on down the drain and don't think about how to reuse.
Like dehumidifier?
Dehumidifier water. Yeah, I imagine.
Well, we've done that.
Yeah, like anywhere that there's extra water left over from any kind of stuff that you're doing, as long as it doesn't have harmful chemicals and things in it, then it's perfectly good to use and for other things. When it comes to hygiene, this is where it gets a little more painful. My dad was Marine, so we had like the Marine Corps showers, the Navy shower. This was actually stemmed from trying to save water on boats, where you turn the water on, you get yourself wet, you turn the water off, and then you do all your sudsing, and then you turn the water back on and you get to rinse off. So it's not the most terrible thing. It's not the most pleasant, but it works. Of course, on non-shower days, there's always sponge baths and wet wipes and things that you could use. Like I said, it's getting a little more painful. You can share bath water as a family. This is what I had to do a lot when I was a kid. So, the recommendation is let your kids bathe first. My mom didn't do that. So, I swear she's still
the youngest. There were 6 of us. Sunday night.
Yep. So the modern standard is to have the kids go first and then, youngest to oldest. My mom definitely did not follow that standard. But then after we all had our baths, we would then scoop that water, with a basin or with buckets. And I have memories of just like trying to get that last little bit of water out of there so that we could then go and water the plants and use that water for other things.
The
So
thing is, all that gray water, you're actually saving electricity too, because
yeah,
which is a big saving today, right?
right, yeah. So
You don't need water to flush it, power to flush your toilet, you got water right there, for example.
exactly, yeah, and like that tub water could then be scooped up to use to flush toilets and all that other stuff. And it's the interesting part of water conservation is it really is in tandem with power conservation.
Yeah.
Because every time you hear that pump kick on, that's power. Every time you use warm water, that's your water heater working hard to get that water warmed up for you. So they are very much dual usage there. The other thing I wanted to talk about was hand washing. One of the things that gets difficult when